I was focused on coming to California when I was like 9 years old.
When Tombstone hit theaters in 1993, no one expected it to become one of the greatest modern westerns of all time. Hollywood had already moved on from cowboy stories, and audiences were more interested in action or science fiction. But somehow, Tombstone brought the spirit of the Old West back to life. With its unforgettable lines like "I'm your Huckleberry" and its gritty, realistic gunfights, the movie found a permanent place in film history. It starred some of Hollywood's most respected names: Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, and Bill Paxton, all playing real historical figures who lived during one of America's most dangerous times. Yet behind the movie's success lies a story that few people know. A story filled with chaos, creative struggles, and unexpected heroes. The film was supposed to be directed by Kevin Jarre, who also wrote the script. He had a passion for Western history and wanted to make a film that showed both the violence and the honor of the Old West. But things didn't go as planned. Jarre's perfectionism and inexperience as a director created problems from the start. He wanted to film everything in a specific, old-fashioned way, but that slowed down the production. Soon, tensions grew, and the producers had to make a difficult choice. The director who had dreamed up Tombstone was suddenly fired. And what happened next changed the course of the film forever. When Kevin Jarre was removed from the director's chair, the production was thrown into confusion. The movie had already started shooting, sets were built, and the actors were deep into their roles. But without a leader, the entire crew was uncertain about what would happen next. The studio brought in a new director, George P. Cosmatos, best known for Rambo: First Blood Part 2. Cosmatos was a strong-willed filmmaker who could handle large productions, but he wasn't deeply connected to the story of Tombstone. At this point, most films would have fallen apart, yet Tombstone didn't. That's because one man quietly stepped up behind the scenes to keep the movie alive: Kurt Russell. Unknown to most of the cast and crew, Russell began taking control of key creative decisions. He cared deeply about the story and wanted to protect the vision that Jarre had started. According to later interviews, Russell worked out an arrangement with Cosmatos. He would officially direct, but Russell would actually guide the performances, camera setups, and overall storytelling. It was a secret understanding meant to save the film from falling apart completely. Russell never wanted credit for this. He didn't talk about it publicly for years because he didn't want to take attention away from Cosmatos or the rest of the team. But cast members like Val Kilmer later confirmed it, explaining that Russell directed much of the movie without ever saying so out loud. In many ways, Russell was the glue that held Tombstone together when everything seemed ready to collapse. Without his quiet leadership, the film might never have reached the screen. Kurt Russell's dedication to Tombstone went far beyond his role as Wyatt Earp. He wasn't just acting. He was shaping the movie scene by scene. He worked long hours, discussing each moment with the cinematographer, checking the pacing, and even rewriting dialogue to keep it sharp. His goal was to make the film feel real. Not like a typical Hollywood Western, but like a story pulled straight from history. He understood that audiences needed to feel the dust, the sweat, and the moral struggles of the Old West. One of the most interesting parts of Russell's secret direction was how he handled the performances. He gave actors space to explore their characters, but also guided them to stay grounded. For example, when Val Kilmer played the dying gunslinger Doc Holliday, Russell encouraged him to bring both arrogance and fragility to the role. The result was one of the most memorable performances in movie history. Kilmer's portrayal of Holliday wasn't just funny or cool, it was haunting and sad. You could see the pain behind every smirk and every cough. Russell also made sure the pacing of the film stayed tight. Westerns often drag in the middle, but Tombstone moves with energy from start to finish. Every shot, every line of dialogue feels purposeful. And even though the production was filled with stress and uncertainty, the final movie looked smooth and confident. That calm, balanced tone came from Russell's leadership behind the camera, something most viewers never realized. If Kurt Russell was the heart of Tombstone, Val Kilmer was its soul. His performance as Doc Holliday is one of the greatest character portrayals in film history. Kilmer didn't just play the role, he lived it. He studied historical documents and letters written by the real Holliday, practiced the Southern accent, and even learned how to twirl his guns the way Holliday might have done. But what made Kilmer's version so unforgettable was the vulnerability he brought to the role. Holliday was a gambler, a killer, and a man dying from tuberculosis. Kilmer showed all sides of him: his wit, his sadness, and his loyalty to Wyatt Earp. The chemistry between Kilmer and Russell carried the film. Their friendship felt real, partly because it mirrored what was happening behind the scenes. While the production was falling apart, The bond between these two actors became the emotional center that kept everything going. Even today, fans quote Kilmer's lines, "I'm your huckleberry, you're a daisy if you do," not just because they sound cool, but because they capture the spirit of a man facing death with humor and courage. Kilmer later said that playing Doc Holliday was one of his most challenging but rewarding roles. He credited Russell for helping him reach that level of depth. Together, they turned Tombstone from a troubled movie into a timeless masterpiece. While Tombstone is loved for its performances, much of its power comes from its connection to real history. The movie is based on true events that happened in Tombstone, Arizona, during the 1880s, a time when law, greed, and survival often clashed in the dusty streets of the American frontier. Wyatt Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday were real people who stood against outlaws known as the Cowboys. The famous gunfight at the OK Corral lasted only about 30 seconds in real life, but its impact on American culture has lasted for more than a century. The filmmakers wanted Tombstone to be as authentic as possible. The costumes, guns, and even the facial hair were designed to match old photographs. Kevin Jarrett's original script went into extreme historical detail, and even after he left the project, much of that realism remained. For example, the real Wyatt Earp did live long enough to see Hollywood's early days and even advised silent movie actors on how gunfights really happened. That strange connection between history and cinema gives Tombstone an almost mythical feeling, as if the real Wyatt Earp somehow helped tell his own story decades after his death. By blending fact and drama, Tombstone managed to feel both epic and personal. It wasn't just a movie about gunfights. It was about loyalty, honor, and the price of justice. That emotional truth made audiences care, and it's why the film still holds up today. Not everyone was happy with the final version of Tombstone. Sam Elliott, who played Virgil Earp, later said that many powerful scenes were cut during editing. The original script had deeper emotional moments that showed how the Earp family suffered from violence and revenge. According to Elliot, those cuts made the film move faster, but also removed some of its heart. Still, he praised Kurt Russell's dedication, saying that without him, the movie might have collapsed completely. These missing scenes are one of the great mysteries of Tombstone. Fans have long hoped for a director's cut that restores the original footage, but so far, it hasn't been released. Some insiders say that the footage was lost or never finished. Others believe it was deliberately removed to keep the film's runtime tight for theaters. Whatever the reason, those deleted moments remain part of the movie's legend. Even with the cuts, Tombstone still manages to feel complete. The relationships between the brothers, the tension with the Cowboys, and the haunting decline of Doc Holliday all leave a lasting impact. Sometimes, less is more. And in this case, the editing helped the movie flow like a fast-paced modern thriller, even though it was set in the 1880s. When Tombstone was released, it faced tough competition from another Wyatt Earp movie, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp, which came out soon after. Many expected Costner's film to win the box office race because of his fame after Dances with Wolves. But surprisingly, Tombstone won over audiences instead. Its faster pace, sharper dialogue, and stronger emotional core made it the clear favorite. Critics called it one of the best westerns in decades, and fans couldn't stop quoting its lines. Over the years, Tombstone has grown into a cultural icon. New generations keep discovering it, and it continues to be celebrated for its honesty, toughness, and unforgettable performances. It revived interest in westerns at a time when the genre seemed dead. More importantly, it showed that even when a movie faces chaos and uncertainty, passion and teamwork can turn it into something legendary. For Kurt Russell, the film became a career highlight. Though he never took official credit as director, everyone who worked on Tombstone knew how much he contributed. He once said that he wanted the story to shine, not his name, and that humility made fans respect him even more. While audiences saw polished gunfights and heroic showdowns, what happened behind the scenes of Tombstone was often the complete opposite: confusion, exhaustion, and pressure. After Kevin Jarre's firing, the cast and crew were left uncertain about their future. Many had joined the project because they trusted Jarre's passion for the Old West. Losing him in the middle of filming created tension, and everyone wondered whether the movie would survive. Kurt Russell became the calm center of that storm. Even though he wasn't officially the director, he naturally stepped into that role to save the project. He worked closely with cinematographer William Fraker to make sure the visual tone stayed consistent with Jarre's original vision. A realistic and dusty look that felt like the real Arizona frontier. Russell also had to deal with scheduling problems, since every day of filming cost thousands of dollars. To keep morale high, he personally reassured crew members, kept the cast motivated, and made sure that every scene counted. George P. Cosmatos, the credited director, handled technical direction, but it was Russell who made the emotional decisions. He decided how characters should act in key moments, how the camera should linger on certain faces, and how tension should build before the famous gunfight. Years later, Val Kilmer confirmed this in interviews, saying, "Kurt was the real director. He just didn't take the credit." That honesty helped explain how such a chaotic shoot resulted in a film that felt so focused and alive. Val Kilmer's portrayal of Doc Holliday is often ranked among the greatest performances in film history, not just westerns, but few realize how much the role physically drained him. Kilmer immersed himself so deeply in the character that it took a toll on his body and mind. He lost weight to look sickly and pale, mimicking Holliday's struggle with tuberculosis. Even during breaks between takes, Kilmer would stay in character, speaking with the same slow, southern drawl that became iconic. Kurt Russell and Kilmer worked together like creative partners. Russell gave Kilmer freedom to experiment, but guided him when scenes needed emotional focus. The famous "I'm your Huckleberry" line wasn't even delivered exactly as written. Kilmer gave it his own rhythm and charm. Russell recognized its brilliance immediately and decided to keep it. That single line became part of pop culture history, quoted endlessly in memes, shirts, and fan videos. Kilmer also added subtle depth to Holliday's friendship with Wyatt Earp. He showed that Holliday wasn't just a gunslinger. He was a man searching for redemption. The way he looked at Earp, half admiring, half teasing, made their relationship feel real. It was loyalty mixed with loneliness. That emotional tension gave Tombstone a soul that most westerns never achieve. Kilmer's effort was so powerful that even critics who disliked westerns praised his performance. He made Doc Holliday immortal, both on screen and in the hearts of movie lovers. Sam Elliott, known for his deep voice and commanding presence, brought incredible strength to the role of Virgil Earp, Wyatt's older brother. His performance gave the film its moral backbone. While Wyatt and Doc represented courage and charisma, Virgil represented duty and sacrifice. Elliot's calm but powerful acting reminded viewers that the Earps weren't just lawmen. They were family, trying to survive in a brutal world. However, Elliot was deeply frustrated with how much of the emotional story was cut from the final version. He later revealed that some of his most heartfelt scenes were removed to keep the movie's pace fast. These deleted moments showed Virgil's guilt after his men were killed, and his pain over his wife's fear. Elliot believed those moments would have made the story even stronger. Still, he respected Kurt Russell's decision-making and called him the true captain of the ship. Elliot's chemistry with his on-screen brothers, played by Russell and Bill Paxton, gave Tombstone its emotional weight. You could feel their unity even when they faced death. That sense of brotherhood wasn't just acting. It grew naturally on set. The three men bonded over long days in the Arizona heat, wearing heavy costumes and breathing in real dust. What you see in the film, that tired but determined look in their eyes, was genuine. It came from living the story, not just performing it. Bill Paxton's role as Morgan Earp is often overlooked, but it's one of the most touching parts of Tombstone. Morgan is the youngest Earp brother, full of optimism and innocence, and his tragic fate reminds viewers that even heroes pay a price. Paxton played the role with warmth and sincerity, making Morgan's death one of the most emotional moments in the movie. Behind the scenes, Paxton was known for his humor and friendliness. He kept spirits high during long shoots, often cracking jokes between takes. But when it came time for emotional scenes, he transformed completely. The sequence showing Morgan's death, with Wyatt holding him as he bleeds out, is one of Kurt Russell's strongest acting moments. According to crew members, that scene was so intense that the set went silent for several minutes after filming ended. Everyone felt the weight of the moment. Russell later said that Paxton's performance made the audience truly understand why Wyatt Earp turned from lawman to avenger. Without Morgan's death, the story would lack its emotional drive. It was the moment when the Western myth became a human tragedy. Paxton gave the film its heart, and though he passed away in 2017, his work in Tombstone remains one of his finest legacies. The story of Tombstone didn't end when the movie was released, because the real Wyatt Earp's legend never stopped inspiring filmmakers. The real Earp lived until 1929, long enough to see Hollywood's earliest Western movies. In fact, he befriended silent film stars like William S. Hart and even gave advice to a young John Wayne. Earp